Hello, everybody. This is Brian Tonsoni coming to you live from Delphi, Indiana, in the podcast studio in the basement of my house. I'm joined today with Cole Rickles. Say hi, Cole.
Hello.
That is Cole Rickles. He's a junior in our Bracketology club. And we're also joined with Daniel Jakes, also another junior at Delphi High School. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
We are the Delphi Bracketology Club. We meet to talk sports, and we are now beginning our deep study of the NCAA tournament brackets. We are throwing together some discussions and talks of how the teams are seeded, and tonight for about 15-20 minutes, we're going to discuss our recent bracket that came out earlier today. As we do, I see Duke and Miami are playing, and every result may change a team up or down a line. There are some seeds that we have in our most recent bracket that we like. There are some that we're not too fond of, and we're learning every time we do a bracket how to put together an excellent bracket. I had a conversation today with a gentleman on Twitter at Bracket Guy Dave, and we were very close to his ideas of teams and seeds, and he shared with me some thoughts on some teams that we were a little bit different from. So it's a process of learning. I appreciate our high school students. It helps them think a little bit, plus they love sports. So let's get to it for this week. Our number one seeds, Oklahoma, Iowa, Villanova, and North Carolina. Mr. Jakes had told me he would replace Kansas with Villanova. And so that's open. The third or fourth number one seed is open for discussion. Our number two seeds are Kansas, Oregon, Xavier, and Texas A&M. So those are our top 8 seeds. I personally believe the top 6 are going to be there come the end of the season. And Kansas, Villanova, Iowa, Oklahoma, there might be some movement, a little bit of movement in and out of there, but I think those 6 are headed for the final 4 seeds, number 1 seed. So those are number 1 and 2 seeds. Cole, what do you think there as far as our seeds that we picked for our number 1 and our number 2 seeds? Which teams do you like, and which teams do you think are a little bit weak in those 1 and 2 seeds?
Well, I'm seeing really good teams so far. Iowa at number 1 is a little bit surprising to me because I understand that they're 7-0 in their conference and they're 16-3, but then you have Indiana there as well, who's 7th seed, and they have the 7-0 in the conference, and they're 17-3. So I think that specific team will be getting moved around a bit, and I think because the Big Ten is very strong conference, so I have a feeling Iowa might be getting moved around, but that's about the only one that really draws my attention. I think Kansas could move up to a number 1. But other than that, this looks like a pretty strong bracket to me.
Okay, very good. Daniel, share with our viewers why you disagreed with my Villanova pick there and would have put Kansas in instead of Villanova.
To me, I would say that the Big 12 is the strongest conference in the entire country. I mean, they've had 2 number 1 seeds or 2 number 1 rankings in the AP poll. Oklahoma lost last week, and they're still ranked number 1 this week.
True.
I just think that they're so deeply talented. They beat Baylor last Saturday, I believe, and I saw that there was a 3-way tie behind Baylor for first place. And I just think the Big 12 is so deeply talented with such a high prestigious level of talent individually from players. I mean, Buddy Hield, Perry Ellis,
Great players.
George Niang, Naz Long, I believe he's still at Iowa State. I mean, it's just such a deep conference.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas has run the table for the most part the past decade or so. But I feel like this is a year that an Oklahoma, Iowa State, a Baylor, I feel like they can, if they get a couple key wins, they'll just fight each other out. They'll battle each other out for the 1 seed. And, I mean, I don't have anything against Villanova.
Yeah. Well, and Villanova's right there. We have a big game coming up at 9 o'clock tonight I think, here at Iowa State. I think it's Oklahoma, right, and Iowa State tonight. Those teams are going to beat up
so.
on each other. And Xavier, I really like Xavier and Coach Mack, but like you said, if one conference gets 2 #1 seeds, I see it being the Big 12. I don't see it being the Big East, Big 10, those others. I could see it Oklahoma and Kansas. So those are our 1s and our 2 seeds. What I have found in putting this bracket together, the 3 through 5, 3 through 6 go up and down all the time. Those teams are pretty solidly in the tournament. You get down to the 7, 8, 9, 10 teams, and you start questioning their resumes, and they may be in or out with a couple-game losing streak. But right now, we're going to talk bracket busters. That's a term that many people will use here in the next 6 weeks. And those are teams that had a quality start to the season and maybe had won their conference regular season title, but when they get to the conference tourney, it's the winner of the conference tourney that gets the automatic bid. And as we know, there are 32 automatic bids into the tournament, and then there are 36 at-large bids. And so a lot of the smaller conferences, if you win the regular season and go 17-1 in your conference but lose and get upset in the tournament, a lot of times you don't get asked to go. So we're going to talk bracket busters. A couple teams specifically, Valpo, which my niece has signed to go play women's basketball, and my brother-in-law was disappointed in me last week for not mentioning them earlier. A really quality team leading their conference. Should they get in over a team like a Clemson or a lower-level Big Ten team like maybe if Wisconsin gets back up into contention? Do we take the bigger conference, 7th, 8th team in a conference, or do we take a Valpo who had a great regular season? Monmouth has had a great regular season in a very small conference, beaten some outstanding opponents like UCLA. If they get upset in their tourney and don't get the automatic bid, should these smaller schools get in the tourney? What are your thoughts? We'll start with you, Cole.
Well, I'd say this is a pretty difficult question because I would love to see a Valpo or a small school like that get into this tournament. But I mean, when you have if we look at the ACC, I mean we've got a conference that's 6 deep and just teams that should all be in the tournament as well. I mean they're all quality teams, so I think I would love to see them make room for a Valpo or another small school like that because I mean. I think they're starting to understand that after a while you start seeing the same bracket over and over again because these teams in these big conferences, I mean, they're good year after year after year because they have the coaching staff, they have all the money to keep pulling people in and everything like that. But I do think I would love to see a Valpo go in or another small school like that, and I think that's what I think they will get the bid to go in, and I hope they do. Not to say that these huge conferences these teams don't deserve to be in, but I mean I would love to see them mix it up a little bit and
yeah, I agree with you on that. Daniel, what are your thoughts on teams like Valpo, Monmouth, maybe and Evansville's kind of been they lost Indiana State the other day, but these smaller schools should they get in instead of a 8th, 9th team from a conference of 16? What do you think?
Wanted to point out Clemson. They're having a regular. They beat Duke. I believe they beat Virginia. I mean, they're putting together and that will be very hard to turn them down come Selection Sunday. But Monmouth, everybody loves the bench mob.
That's true.
And I mean, you said it. Your son, they have this bench mob that they do during their OT period. I mean, I think they're perfect to fit that bracket buster role. I mean, they have the chemistry. I mean, it would be perfect. Valpo, they're putting together a very strong resume. I mean, I think those 2 teams get in. I think that it's too hard to say no to them if they lose in their bracket or in the tournament.
I agree with both of you. I would like to see Valpo and Monmouth. I love the bench mob. I love what I'm biased. What my son does down at Rossville. He's got the younger kids doing a great job, and I like to see that team carrying that excitement. And that's what March Madness is. That's what sells ads, and we like to see that on when teams play. And I think those teams can play. I know Monmouth has beaten UCLA, and I don't have their resume up right in front of me, but they've got a couple top 50 wins and some other top 100 wins. So. The bubble
I think they
teams,
beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's true. And some of these bubble teams that are on maybe in one day and out the other don't want Valpo and Monmouth to lose their tournament. They want Valpo and Monmouth to win, get that automatic bid, so it opens up a at-large bid. Okay, let's shift our discussion here to the state teams here in Indiana. Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame, Valpo, we've already discussed, and Butler, and how they're playing right now. We have Purdue a 5 seed. We have Indiana 7, and I think that's actually a little too low. I think they should be an 8 or a 9. Notre Dame at a 9. Butler at a 11, I believe, playing Texas. So let's go with Cole. Let's give you Purdue, Cole. What do you think about Purdue as a number 5 seed right now?
Well, I love watching Purdue. They're such a fun team to watch, and I think they're actually a very strong team as well. But I would have to say, ranking them as a 5 seed in here, it's difficult. I'm not too sure if they are a 5 seed.
Would you move them up to a 6 or 7 or down lower?
I would have to say, I mean, when we're comparing these Indiana teams together, and I'm not trying to put in any bias here, but I don't see a Purdue being a 5 seed and a Indiana being a 7. I think those two should be switched, because I definitely see Indiana as being I think Indiana's a stronger team, and I do like Purdue around this area. I think they would either be a 6 or a 7. I think 8 would be pushing it, but I think Purdue's placed pretty well in this. It just depends, though, because I mean they're 5-3 in their conference, so I mean I think it's they're just tilting on the edge. If they get a couple conference loses, then I mean they could be a bubble team.
Daniel, let's go to you on if you have anything about Purdue or Indiana or Notre Dame. Do you think that we have them seeded accurately, and where do you think these teams are headed, these in-state teams?
I think Indiana is one of the hottest teams in the country right now. I mean, they're playing on all 4 cylinders.
They haven't played anybody yet.
They have the confidence to keep going. I mean, fair enough. But Purdue, I mean, I think they rely on their bigs too much. I mean, I went and saw them play Ohio State, and Caleb Swanigan had a double-double, but, I mean, it didn't feel like he had a double-double. I mean, I think he was swatted 4 times in the first half against us, and I don't know. I think Purdue could be ranked a little higher to 6 or 7, like Cole had said. Indiana, I feel like when they get into the thick of their schedule, I think they'll prove some people wrong, and I think they'll get a couple key wins. But Notre Dame, I mean, I haven't heard much about them, to be honest. I know they blew a big lead against IU. They've lost to Monmouth. But I think Indiana and Purdue are going to be the 2 main teams. That Butler-Texas game, though, that could be a shootout.
Yeah,
that could be an offensive showdown.
Great game. I like Butler. I like the way they play, but they've lost several games in conference. And the thing about it is they're not bad losses, though. They're to tough teams. They're losing to tough teams. They're losing on the road. Creighton is 13-8 and playing a lot better. So you can't dismiss a Butler. But Butler has gone from about a 5 seed down to a 10 or 11 in a lot of other brackets besides ours. I'd like to see them get a couple key wins here and move up. I think you'll see Purdue and Indiana in the top 6 seeds. And that is if Indiana has 6 really tough games left. And if they could go 3-3 against some of the top teams, the Purdue's, the Michigan States, I think Indiana can move up, like Cole said, and they might belong in the 4 or 5 range. I just believe Purdue's a top 20 team. I know they've lost a couple games that they felt they shouldn't have, but they guard, and I think guarding plays in the tournament. And I think that's why our Indiana schools, Notre Dame doesn't play a whole lot of defense, but they're winning. They beat Duke. We already talked about Valpo. Cole, as far as teams besides Purdue, which or you can include Purdue, which Indiana team would you like to see the most in a tournament? If you had a chance to go to a tournament game, which Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame, Valpo, or Butler, which team would you go and follow for a game or two if you could?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do. I really do like the way that Purdue plays. As I said, it's really fun. But I think that Indiana just really gives you that that feel of basketball whenever you watch them. They just give you the offensive shootout, as Daniel said. I think Indiana displays that as well. I'd would love to watch Indiana play. I mean, I've watched a few of their games, and it's very entertaining. I mean,
And you're not bucking for extra credit because I'm sitting here in the Indiana room, right?
no. I've got
You
my
don't
own
need
Indiana
extra credit.
sweatshirt on.
Okay,
I'm just
excellent.
saying. I think Indiana would be the one of the most fun to watch.
Good choice. Daniel, I know you're an Ohio State Buckeye team, and they've been struggling here with the young team, and they're going to have to put together some wins to make the tournament. But if Ohio State doesn't make the tournament, or even if they do, which Indiana school of these five would you most like to follow or go see play?
I would probably say Butler. If it all pans out like we have in our bracket here, they play Texas first. That would be a tremendous game. Shaka Smart's press carried over to Texas. He has, I think, in my opinion, better athletes than he did at VCU. And then they'd play the more than likely Virginia team.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm Brogdon, put him on Roosevelt Jones or Kellen Dunham. I mean, that's a couple great teams right there. And then, I mean, winner of that play Oregon, Utah, or Valpo. I mean, that's just, I mean, I don't know. And then IU, they play Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
They play Oregon State and Gary Payton the third or junior, I think. I mean, put him on Yogi, shut him down. There's so many great matchups.
Yeah, the Indiana teams
it's hard to pick one.
In this week's bracket, our Indiana teams, Purdue versus VCU. There's some good matchups there that how we seeded the teams and bracketed the teams. Our Indiana school, I like all our Indiana schools probably except one, to be honest with you, and I admire the way they guard and they play. I think they do a good job down the road. Obviously, for me, it'd be Indiana, but I'd like to see Valpo, and I would really hate to be a top seed 4, 5, 6 and get Valpo as a 10, 11, 12 seed. I think they're going to be due to pull up an upset. Okay, let's take a look at the bracket here and which teams are overseeded and which teams are underseeded. Meaning, which team is too low? A 3 seed you think should be lower, or a team that's like a 9 or a 10 that you think is a little bit better. Pick one team that you would move down, and one team that you would move up based on our bracket this week. We'll go with Daniel first on this one. Overseeded versus underseeded teams in our current bracket.
I think one team that's underseeded is Baylor. I mean, they're in one of the deepest conferences, I believe, in the country, like I said before. Mm-hmm. They're a 6 seed here playing the winner of the UCLA George Washington game, which, I mean, that could be a tremendous game too. But I think they're underseeded at a 6. I think they could be up there in the 4-5 range. I think there are
some bracketologists at them a little bit higher.
I think one team that is overseeded is Kentucky. I think this is John Calipari's worst team that he's coached since he's moved to Kentucky. I mean, they have a 3-point guard system that I don't think will work out.
Okay.
I think they're overseeded as a 4.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Cole, looking at the bracket, which team is too low as a 2 or 3 and needs to be moved up a higher seed and vice versa? What do you think?
Well, for my input as a team that's seeded too low, I would say Duke. I mean, I've watched a few of their games. They're 4-3 in their conference right now, and having them as a 5 seed, I mean, they need to be pushed up. I'd probably say maybe even a 7, just because I don't think their play has been well at all. I think it's only just the thought and the name of Duke is getting them to that 5 seed. But I mean, they're really not. They're not impressing me, at least. I mean, I've seen much better Duke teams.
And Cole, they're down 8 right now as I'm watching the game on the other end of the podcast studio. And also, bracket guy Dave, that Twitter handle, he has Duke as a 7 seed.
Right.
So there you go. Good point there. Okay, how about a team that you would move up?
Team that I would move up. I mean, it would have to come from the ACC again. I think Louisville is going to be one of those. I would say they should be maybe a 3 seed. I think Louisville could actually do very well in this year's bracket. They're 5-1 in their conference right now, 16-3. I mean, they're right behind North Carolina, and North Carolina is the number 1 seed right now. I think Louisville is just right on the heels of North Carolina, and I think they could actually do very well in this year's conference. I hope they do as well.
Yeah, Louisville's a fun team to watch in the brand that they play, and Pitino always has his teams playing well come tournament time. This is tough for me. I think the teams that I struggle with are the teams that only have 1 win, and it's kind of questionable, but I would have to go with the team that I think Oregon's a little high. I know that they have like 8 top 50 wins, but I just don't know that they're really a 2 seed. I think maybe they're a 3 or a 4. I think they're a solid team. I think that conference is really tough, but as a 2 seed, I think that's a little low, but in comparison, and when we talk Thursday in our meeting, I'll start showing you in comparison, it's kind of hard to move them down because Maryland seems better than Oregon, but Maryland doesn't have the number of wins or the strength of schedule that Oregon does. So I would say Oregon is a little seated too high and needs to move down. The team that I think I have trouble with Dayton, too, at a number 5. Their resume really should maybe be a 3, so that's maybe a team that I would move up. But I don't see them as a power school, so I struggle with that. As far as moving up, Utah has a pretty good resume. Their power stats aren't very good, but they're a 7, and I think that, again, they should maybe be a 5 or a 4. So there are always going to be, for the people in our committee and for people watching and following us, there's always going to be some that are just hard to gauge on where we're going to put them. Okay, gentlemen, our last question, bubble teams. Which teams are 9, 10, 11 that should be out? Which teams might be out that you believe should be in? We'll start with Daniel.
Oh, boy. I don't know. I mean, George Washington, I think that they've got St. Mary's. I feel like Gonzaga will put them away. I mean, Pepperdine in that conference too. I mean, they've been known for a couple upsets here and there. San Diego State at a 12 seed. I think they can honestly fall out.
I think they're in because they're leading their conference. I don't think they'll get a at-large bid, but okay.
I mean, there are a couple teams. Cincinnati. I mean, I don't see them getting in come tourney time. Honestly, I see them losing a couple games that they should win, and I don't see them doing too well in their conference tourney.
Yeah, good call on Gonzaga. I think they're out right now, but they're typically been strong, and I think they'll push their way back into the tournament. Cole,
well, I think.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I just think Kyle Wiltjer, he's a senior this year. He's not gonna let them not be in the tourney. I think he's been known for some really strong performances down the stretch, and I think this year he's gonna provide.
Yeah, the bubble's hard for me. St. Joe is 16-3 again, but they haven't beaten anybody. I'd like to see them get in. There's some other teams on the outside looking in. Temple got a nice win, beat a undefeated SMU, so I think that puts them on the bubble. They might work their way in. Anytime you see the matchups like Cincinnati versus Syracuse in a play-on game and UCLA, George Washington, those are our last 4 teams that are in the tournament. Those are the ones that are most at risk for losing and dropping out. But anyone in the 10-11 range, Washington, Oregon State, we have Texas Tech as a number 9, and some bracketologists have them out, and they did lose, I think, their starting center. And then you have Florida, which we have as an 8, and some people have them as 11 or 12, and I think they're on the bubble just because they have good stats, but they haven't won quite a bit. Cole, we're going to come to you right now. We see you pondering with your head down in your hand there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the bubble teams?
This is a tough one. I would have to agree with Daniel and with his Gonzaga, especially with Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is definitely out, and I think Syracuse will be coming in. I think Syracuse is a much better team than Cincinnati, and so I do think Cincinnati will be out. Coming in, that's tough. It really is. Man.
We have time. We don't have to solidify
Yeah.
anything yet, but we'll be talking a little bit on Thursday again about teams that are going to be in and out and how to compare teams and how to make decisions on where teams should be, because it's not easy.
Well, I
Right.
think this year's bubble teams, I don't think they're that strong, honestly. I
Mhm.
mean, you said St. Joe, they're 16-3, but they don't have very many top wins. I mean,
Yeah.
their resumes aren't as good as they have been in the past.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of teams that are like that right now, and there's some teams even like Indiana and Maryland have only won one top 50 win, so they're going to have to really solidify the resume, and we still have a long way to go. A lot of people think we shouldn't even be having conversations yet about the brackets and things because it's too early. We're not even at the halfway mark of the conference schedule yet, and take a team like my team. Indiana 7-0, they can go on a 3 or 4 game losing streak and fall back to the 4th or 5th place in the Big Ten very easily as they play tougher competition. Then they can move down quite a few, or even out, or move on up. So I think it's up for grabs. So final comments. Cole, we're going to go for final comments tonight.
Yeah, just to add in, I know SMU, I think they were just delivered their first win. Was it last night?
Or their first loss, but they're ineligible.
Or their first loss, yeah. They were delivered their first loss. And I think, I honestly do think they'll be in this bracket this year. I mean,
well, Cole, they should be, but they're ineligible. They had some recruiting violations.
Oh, did they really? Oh my gosh,
Yes.
I didn't know that. That's
So
hilarious.
no, they're out. There's like 3 teams that are out.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
But
All right, never mind.
otherwise they should be in the top 2 or 3 seeds.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't see them. I was searching here like 3 different times. Like, these guys are 7-1, 18-1. I mean,
Yeah.
huh.
No,
All right, well, that makes
they're
sense.
banned.
Dirty.
They did some illegal calls or something like that. So, Cole, we appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing you Thursday, and we'll keep doing this every Monday night around sometime between 6:30 and 8 o'clock. So we thank you for your participation tonight, bud.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Daniel, last thoughts on this week's bracket and college basketball in general?
Providence, I think they're a team to watch.
Chris Dunn.
Chris Dunn and Ben Bentil. Those are
Mhm.
2 names that you need to know by come March, because Ben Bentil, they got a win against Villanova, I think it was the other day. 32 points and 16 rebounds, I believe, was his stat line.
In
Know
overtime.
that name. Yeah.
Good call. Good call.
And Texas A&M, they're a 2 seed right now. I think if they run the table, they can make their bid for a 1 seed. So I mean, just those are 2 teams that I think you need to keep an eye on.
And we will do that, Daniel. Thank you again for taking time to participate. Delphi Bracketology. Follow us at Delphi Brackets at delphibracketology.weebly.com. You can see our bracket online, a little bit of explanation. You can see the pictures of our group. You can see some other information. So we will do this every Monday, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We'll have a conversation. We'll try to get out a new bracket every Monday afternoon, all the way up until Selection Sunday, and then you can judge us and see if we know what we're doing. And we're in the process of figuring it out. So for this Monday night, enjoy a good week of college hoops. We appreciate all of you. Thank you, and have a good